Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the press conference for Bros, which had its world premiere last evening. My name is Keith Benny. I'm the Senior Director of Audience and Community here at TIFF. As you join us today, we encourage you to reflect the land that you're on and its history. We're on the treaty lands and territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit and the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat. The territory is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant and is home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people. We are grateful to work on this land, and we are grateful to show the work of Indigenous artists year-round here at TIFF. We kindly ask that you please refrain from photography or video today. We will make images available on our press site. We'd like to thank our partner Twitter for live streaming the press conference here today. Comedies have historically not always been friendly to LGBTQ plus audiences, whether it's using queer characters as a punchline or perpetuating harmful stereotypes. But Bros looks to level that playing field. It's the first major studio film with an all LGBTQ plus cast, which is something to celebrate. I've seen it 3 times now, and each and every time it gets funnier and funnier, and I fall in love with it even more, which I think is the hallmark of a great comedy. And in addition to being really funny, it's also heartfelt and touching and personal. It explores rejection that LGBTQ plus people have faced, the strength of our character, but also the ways in which homophobia and transphobia have made queer love and queer sex distinctly different and unique from all different types of love. And as Bobby says in the film, love is not always love. That's a whole lot to pack into one movie, but this creative team and this cast completely pulls it off. So please join me in welcoming the cast and creative team for Bros, starting with producer Judd Apatow. We're looking for producer Judd. Here he is. Cast members Eve Lindley, Miss Lawrence, co-writer, actor, and executive producer Billy Eichner, cast member Luke Macfarlane, T.S. Madison, Jim Rash, Dot Marie Jones, Guy Branham, and finally the co-writer, producer, and director Nick Stoller. All right, thank you all for joining us today. It's probably the queerest press conference you'll ever take part in at a film festival. Thank you all for bringing the film here to TIFF. We're really appreciative to have it here and for sharing it with our audiences. I'm going to start with a few questions, and then I'll incorporate questions from the press, which have been sent in advance. I want to start maybe with Billy and Nick. You saw the comedy on its feet for the first time last night, seeing it on the big screen and hearing it connect with an audience. What did that feel like after writing it together?
I mean, it was pretty thrilling, I have to say. Like, that was just one of those, I'll remember that my whole life kind of evenings.
I agree. It was really amazing. I think it was even better than we hoped it would be and imagined it would be. It's just incredible. We haven't, there aren't that many comedies that get released in movie theaters anymore. And especially after COVID, we haven't had many movies like that in a movie theater. So to hear, I don't know how many people were there, but all of those people laughing was really, it was extraordinary. It was really, it blew my mind. It was amazing.
1,700 people for the record.
Yeah.
And maybe I think that's a great question maybe to ask of everyone, just how it felt. We've been producing this festival under COVID conditions for 2 years. We're bringing people back together. This is a big film, and it demands a big audience response. So Judd, and then going down the line, how did it feel to see it on its feet last night?
It was amazing because we all talk about it for years, our hopes and dreams for what the movie would be and how people would respond to it. So to hear those laughs and have it be so moving, it really feels like a miracle because it's just the result of thousands of hours of conversations.
Eve?
Yeah, it was my first big kind of premiere like that. So it was definitely a wonderful moment, and getting those laughs and like seeing how it all turned out, everything we did was unbelievable.
Yeah, for me, this is my first TIFF festival, my first time in Toronto. And to be here with an all LGBTQ cast taking our rightful place in entertainment, it felt magical. It felt magical to see people laugh at our art and laugh with us in our art, and also experience how we love and what we look like in love.
Luke?
I mean, it's terrifying. It's always just terrifying to watch yourself on the big screen. But so incredibly proud to get to see the work of your fellow actors. I mean, truly, I've seen the movie kind of like this a few times, but I watched it fully open and feeling the love from the audience, and I'm so proud to be up here with everybody.
Give him a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Jesus Christ.
No.
He's the star of the movie.
Don't.
Honestly, it was very magical for me because I actually got to watch the world laugh with us and not at us. And because this film was produced by us for them and us too, but it just was a great thing to just feel everybody's great energy, and we were joking and jokes were out, but we weren't the joke, and it was just a magical thing to absorb that from the audience, and I felt so good. So good. You can clap for me too.
She's going to tell us when we clap.
Good. Yeah, last night I sort of had to unpack it a little bit later because last night was my first time actually seeing the movie, and sort of what Luke was saying, he was fully open. One peel, you're like judging yourself completely the whole time, and then you miss a scene afterwards because you're like, Jim, get out of your head, let it go. But then you're watching all of this stuff that you were not privy to as we were shooting, because we obviously were as a board all together, and then you see this beautiful performances from everyone up on the stage, and then you find yourself tearing up, both for the experience and the journey that this thing began much longer than we all came aboard, of course, but to be a part of that, and then so you're unpeeling that, and then you go inward, certainly as somebody who, for me, was like, my journey was like, I came, now it's just over 10 years, but it came out over 10 years ago, but that was kind of later in my mind. And I think Jim, you're a part of something that's kind of beautiful and opening up a whole part of yourself that started a journey a while ago. And imagine what I would have felt like having seen this movie at a much younger age. So all these things started, peel away. And then I went back to Jim, you got watch your performance. No, just kidding. Then I went back to notes on myself. But anyway, it was a beautiful, wonderful experience from beginning to end. That's all.
It was overwhelming. The fact that we actually got to be a part of this huge success that you boys have put together, it's unbelievable. Hearing the response, it's my first time seeing it with an audience other than a few cast members and our teams in LA, to hear the response of the audience, and not that they just saw the fun parts and the funny parts, but they got it. And that is so gratifying. And it was really wonderful. And I'm very honored and proud to be a part of this.
Hearing it with the laughs was amazing. But you know where the jokes are, and you hope that they do well. And there was a moment near the end of the film when Luke was on the couch being vulnerable, and like a group of girls in the back went, oh, and like that's the kind of stuff you don't know that people are going to do. That's the kind of reaction that is an amazing surprise at a screening like that.
Question for Billy. So much of Bros feels inspired by your own experiences. How did you approach the task of ensuring this romantic comedy felt authentic to gay people?
I mean, we just took it one step at a time. I don't know if I had any like cardinal rule about how to do that. I've never written a movie before. And Nick really walked me through how to do that for years. Honestly, when I was just sitting there writing scenes, especially at the beginning, I really was focused on what a person, I mean, most of the characters are LGBTQ. It obviously centers on two gay men. I've been openly gay my whole life. So many of my close friends are gay. I know how we communicate with each other. I know the walls we put up. I know when they come down and then we put them back up again. I know how we use jokes as a defense mechanism to get through the world. I do know how we speak. And I know the moves that we make. I know how we navigate, and so I just kept thinking every step of the way, okay, what would really happen next? Not the sitcom version of what happens next, not what the studio in my head, what a major studio would want to happen next or would want to be the next line. What would really happen? What would the person really say based on my personal experience? And what's the funniest way we can do that? Because really for Nick and I, like our whole priority the whole time was, no one ever sat down and said, let's write a historic film, or let's write the first of this or the first that. We were just always thinking, how do we make this as funny and as honest as possible? That was always our goal. We just wanted to make a really funny movie. And like everyone said, hearing, I've seen screenings of the movie, but never with that many people. And they've always been under the umbrella of like test screening, it felt like it was still like part of the process. And that felt like the first time an audience of real people was seeing it. And so to hear all of that laughter, to hear how many of the jokes would land like in a huge audience full of straight people, gay people, LGBTQ people, that made me feel like, okay, like we really did what we set out to do here, Yeah,
absolutely. One of the standout moments for me in the film is that scene on the beach when Bobby talks about all the rejection he's faced and the people who have told him to hide himself. It's a really important plot point because it comes back later in the relationship with Aaron, but I think it's going to be so resonant for a lot of gay men who have encountered that feeling. How did you approach writing that monologue and really anchoring it within the story?
Yeah, it's strange. My one request to Nick and our line producer before we started shooting is, I was like, I'll shoot anything on any day. Obviously, we had to shoot out of order like most movies. I said, please don't make me do that monologue on the first day and don't make me have a sex scene with Luke on the first day because we barely know each other. And I had to do both on the first day. They were like, sorry, we only have this house we want to shoot in for one day. So... And
I like to treat actors with respect.
It wasn't his fault. Director. It wasn't his fault. It's just how it goes sometimes. And I remember, we had a version of that monologue written, and then I remember the weekend before we shot, I was like working on the lines, and I thought, there's stuff missing here. I thought this is my first time ever to really tell a version of my story. Bobby is not identical to me. He has certain issues to an extreme that I may not have them. Some things are very close to me. So it's not completely autobiographical, but obviously that part in particular is coming from a very real place. The specifics are not the same necessarily, but so much of what he's saying does come from my real life and what I've experienced. And that was one of those moments where I thought, I don't know if I'm ever going to get to make a movie again. So I'm going to take this opportunity to tell my story, And I think that everyone wants to be understood. And I'm the last person to ever want to be seen as like a victim, especially a victim of being gay, because I've never felt that way. And yet, the world sometimes puts you in that position where it really becomes an obstacle, even though it's so silly that it's an obstacle, but it is, and it has been for decades, especially in our complicated, sometimes hypocritical industry. And I thought this is a chance to really tell my story, you know, and I think it works for the story we're telling, because Bobby is clearly not a character who lets his guard down like this often, and we've established that. And so it shows you how much he cares about Aaron, because although he's obviously very scared to share these things, you also, when you meet someone that you love, you want to know that you can share these things and that they will still love you. And so it worked on a number of levels. And you know, I also was working on it. I was working on the lines leading up to it, and I thought, there's stuff missing here. There's a story about a generation of LGBTQ folks and beyond, which doesn't really get told. Maybe we talk about it amongst ourselves in gay bars or at house parties or at dinners amongst our friends, but we don't put that story out into the real world about all the fucking code switching that we've had to do over the years, and you know, all the shit, the microaggressions and the overt shit and the more subtle stuff that we had to navigate, and all the stuff that got in our way that we had to always choose, like, fuck it, I'm gonna forge ahead anyway. But that doesn't mean you don't experience moments of self-doubt. And I thought it was just important to get that out there in the world. And finally, you know, there's a lot of talk about, like, oh, you know, we're celebrating this movie as the first this and the first that, and that's all wonderful, and we should, and that's important, and it is a moment to celebrate. But we also have to acknowledge the decades of LGBTQ folks who did not get this opportunity, right? And that is fucked up, you know? So yes, everyone likes us now, but why did it take so long? I think is a question that's worth asking. And I just said that on 3 hours of sleep, so thank you very much.
Nick, you and Judd are the straight allies among this group of LGBTQ plus artists. And the film was your idea. I want to know more about why you wanted to bring this story to the screen.
Yeah, I mean, it started because I worked with Billy on Neighbors 2. I cast him in that, and then I cast him in the show called Friends from College. And in Friends from College, I discovered he was a really good actor. And obviously I knew him from Billy on the Street. I knew how funny he was, but he had a lot of dramatic scenes in that show, and he was great. And then we screened the first episode of Friends from College in a movie theater. And every time he was on screen, the audience like died laughing, like tore the house down kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, he's a movie star. He deserves a movie. And I'd been intrigued by the idea of a romantic comedy. I don't know what's happening. About two men falling in love. What? Oh, and but obviously I'm straight. That's not my story to tell. And so I approached Billy about doing this, and he said yes. And we started talking about it, you know, almost 5 years ago, or about 5 years ago.
It feels like you pulled off something really important: the ability to cast an all LGBTQ cast and tell a gay rom-com in an authentic way. As the film moved through development, how did you ensure that you could stick to that kind of creative license to be able to tell the story the way that you and the way that Billy wanted to tell the story?
I mean, I've directed all of my movies at Universal, and there's a reason for that. They kind of are, you know, they certainly have their notes, but their notes are more about, like, is the ending satisfying? Does the character arc make sense? They're those kinds of notes. In terms of comedy, they've never given us a note like, this joke doesn't work, or you're taking this too far. They know we'll find that place. They're very trusting. And so I just knew that if we were really honest, and that if I just listened to Billy and we just tried to tell an honest story, that the rest would sort itself out. And the more honest you are, and the more specific you are, the more universal and more relatable your movie is, ironically, your story is. And so that's all we did. We just talked and talked and talked. I mean, writing this kind of movie is like a many-year therapy session. We just, like, Billy and I just, like, talked and talked and talked about this for years. And so, yeah, that's kind of how we did it. And anything that felt kind of false or cliched, we just eventually fell by the wayside. And yeah.
Luke, firstly, welcome home.
Thank you.
We always like to claim a Canadian when they come back.
We're very good at that. Us Canadians, we can sniff each other out. Out. We can sniff each other out. Yes.
Aaron is more than just a love interest in the film. He has such a big character journey, and we really see him open up throughout the course of the movie. How did you approach playing the character, and how is it different from other romantic leads that you've played in the past?
I mean, first of all, the first time I read the script, I thought to myself, oh, they're giving this guy a real part. You know, it's obviously, it's Billy's vehicle. You know, it's a big comedy for a studio with a known comedian who is going to have to tell it, but they gave me a real story. So the first thing, I was just incredibly grateful that I got to go on a real journey. And it turns out it's very, very linked to the things that I have spent a lot of time thinking about in my own personal life, which is what it means to be a certain kind of a man, a gay man, in the world right now, and where my identity exists with that, especially in Hollywood. You know, I have been in romantic comedies before. I have played a lot of straight male interests in romantic comedies before. And that's wonderful, and that's great, and that's exciting, but I got to tell this story. So I'm incredibly grateful to everybody for that. And I have no idea what your question was. I'm just talking now.
No, you answered it perfectly.
Very good.
I want to talk about the LGBTQ plus committee that was helping open the new museum. So Eve, Miss Lawrence, TS, Jim, Marie. You lovingly make light of the identity politics within the community, but do it in such a thoughtful way. So Eve, I'm wondering what it was like to be part of this ensemble coming together.
It was like a dream come true. I was like pinching myself all the time because everyone on the board is a legend in their own right, you know? And it was like similar to how we all kind of come from different identities. We all kind of come from different channels. So I was just like, I can't believe I'm working with these people. And like, they all kind of have a different like improvising style, you know? And like, I just knew for me, I was like, I need to bring my A game because I'm working with literal living legends and, you know, you got to show up.
Miss Lawrence, this is an all openly LGBTQ plus cast, and I know members of the crew were as well. What dynamic does that create on set when you're coming into a group that's from the community, kind of putting this movie together?
When I walked on set, you know, you go in with as a professional, you know, you're like, okay, professional, I'm gonna follow all the protocol professionals do, but then to get there and, you know, the base camp PA is, you know, a gender nonconforming individual, and then I meet the wardrobe team, and then they're all a part of that. I'm like, okay, wait a minute, this is like all family here, right? So I'm like, this is all family. This is new. I knew in that moment that this is by divine assignment that we were doing this, because nowhere had I ever seen or experienced or worked in that I experienced anything like that. And to be a part of the board in offering my ideas about what our story, what stories should be told in a museum, the truth is we all have points of views, and we all have a legendary story of legendary people of whose shoulders we stand on that should be told. And it felt so natural to be in that space with so many people that understand exactly who they are in real life. And again, it was dreamy then, and it is still very dreamy now.
Amazing. TS, you shine in every scene that you're in. I want to know what it was like for you to take part in such a great group and be part of that committee.
Well, listen, this is just an amazing experience to work with such legendary people and to have great names attached. You know, it's like you're already an iconic individual and then adding more iconic people to your belt. It's like Thanos and all the getting all the Infinity Stones, you know? So it's just like, it is an amazing experience, because I do feel like that this is going to be a lasting thing that goes on after this, because, you know, we are really anticipating Bros 2, but it was amazing. And to piggyback off of what Ms. Lawrence said about walking into the workspace and being surrounded by family, honey, y'all know I say what I want to say when I want to say it, and it felt so good that I didn't have to watch my mouth. I was like, ooh, I can cuss in here, honey.
I can cuss, I can tell an old nasty gay joke, I could be a mess and nobody's gonna tell nobody. And I made sure, I was like, wait a minute, wait. But Miss Lawrence still was tapping me on the shoulder like, sister, even though we in a good space, behave. I said, okay, girl, I ain't gonna show out.
No, because sister would be like, to ask her, you gay too?
I would, because I didn't, it was like, I've never been on set where everybody was just like gay or trans or gender non-conforming, you know? And I will mistakenly tell an awful joke that could get me in hot water. And I didn't have to really worry about that there because everybody got it. And so just like last night when the audience was laughing and catching all of the jokes, I was like, okay, they get all the stuff, you know, all right, good. You know, we in good company. You know, and it really felt good. Eve, I really liked working with you. You were really good in your improv too. That was good. And thank you so much for acknowledging the girls, our legends in the room, because you're a legend too.
Absolutely.
Speaking of legends, Jim, you are a writer in addition to being an actor and comedian. And you said last night that you took part in the live reading of the film early on. What was it like to see the evolution from that early version to now?
Yes, oh, sorry. My first time with a mic. Training wheels. No, we were. I don't even know what 2019. I always make up a year, but it was. Yeah, we did the table read, and at that point we read our characters, but we also just like you normally do. Read a bunch of different characters, and I obviously that was to hear it out loud and see where they were with it and where they wanted to go with it. So there was tons that was still there and new things to be discovered. And so I think at that point, we weren't attached or anything. We were just doing it and do those often, And so it already felt special there, but I don't think to the degree of what I knew it would be. And then to get to the stage of because I want to say this because I meant to say it to Billy last night and it goes back to the monologue that he was just talking about because I thought it was so beautiful, and I agree. I have notes. No, I don't. I have no notes. But
Jim, it's locked. It's locked.
When you see,
it's locked. Yeah,
okay,
it's
well, you got what you got. You got what you got.
We can't do anything with stuff.
And this is more a TV thing. When you have a long monologue in there, everyone freaks out. Like how you can't do that. You can't cut away. What are we watching? And then when you see movies, which all have they push in or something, and these beautiful monologues. But when you have them in the hands of someone who's coming from a place of their core belief and heart in the story they want to tell, it can be one of the most beautiful things. So I was giving props to that because it's a challenge sometimes to write that and allow it to get to the screen. And the fact that you got it to the screen was beautiful. So that didn't really answer your question. That was just my side dish. Anyway, but I will real quick, walked in, you whenever you shoot a movie, you're gonna be with this family. We were together for the three like actual in the conference room scenes were 3 days in a row of sitting around a table, coverage, and you hope that you have a family that you just love to be with because you're gonna be there the next day and you're gonna hear it over and over and you're gonna play with it. And this obviously was one of those wonderful experiences because of all the celebratory reasons we had. Jim, let it go.
I thought Jim was Stanley Tucci when I first walked in.
I got a good Stanley Tucci last night.
I promise you I did. When I first walked in, I was like, ooh, I'm working with Stanley Tucci.
I got a good one last night. I was in the lobby and a woman, can I get a picture? I said, sure. And she says, I just love what you're doing on CNN. And I'm like, and then you scroll your brain like, what am I doing? And then she goes, what you're doing in Italy or something like that. I go, oh, I'm not Stanley Tucci. And then you have this awkwardness. They don't want the picture anymore. And so you don't know how to wrap this up. You're just like, okay, well, I love Stanley too. He's amazing. I wish I had his talent. And then you give the phone back and you walk away. And that was the end of our discussion.
Oh my God.
That's it. Now I'm definitely done. Go.
I'll also say one quick thing, which is that monologue, like my original cut of it was a lot shorter. And it's to Billy's credit. He was like, no, we have to live in this for a lot longer. And he extended it. He extended it to a place where I was like, I don't know if this can, having made a lot of these kinds of movies, you have to, the tone of it is you have to get to the joke, you have to keep it going. But I trusted him. I mean, you have a trusting relationship with your partner. And he And he was like, we got to try it. And then we did it. The first screening, it was one of the favorite scenes from the test audience.
Mm-hmm.
And usually the favorite scene of the test audience is like, you know, it's like one of those big set pieces in Bridesmaids or something like that. And it wasn't, and you could hear a pin drop in the theater. And it was a real, I mean, that's one of the great things about getting to work in this industry is I'm always learning new stuff. You're always learning new stuff from the different people you collaborate with. And that was a real learning experience for me and something that was very exciting, like a thrilling thing to just to get to really live in a dramatic moment that feels very earned and beautiful.
And the first day of filming.
Yeah, and the first day of filming because I respect actors. and then there was this. I think the sex scene was first, and then that. Yeah,
one of the sex scenes. Yeah.
Dot Marie, you mentioned last night that you've been in the industry for 31 years, and you said that Glee and this film are your two highlights. What about this role was so meaningful?
This role, like Jim was saying, we did the table read back in 2019, and you read it, and it's like, oh my, I've never read a script where there's more than the Bull Dyke and maybe one other token gay person or LGBTQ person that wasn't like the butt of a joke or the bad guy or the bad girl that's going to kick some guy's ass. And it was lovely to see all of us come together, and yeah, we were fighting and arguing and stuff, but I don't even know how to explain it other than it worked so well, and the utmost respect to everybody, you know, because we all wanted our idea to be the idea in the conference room, but to get to go to work every day and you didn't, because I've been on sets where people ask really stupid questions about my personal life, and I'm like, that's why it's called a personal life. And if you knew me and were my friend or close family, you would know that. And there was, I guess the best way to say it is there were no boundaries. There were no boundaries I had to frickin' walk. There was nothing but love on this set. And I have to say one thing too about you boys on the beach. That was one of the most vulnerable, honest scenes I've seen in a long ass time. It was beautiful. It made me cry again.
Thank you.
But yeah, it's just, I'm very honored and very proud of the work that we've done. And God knows the fun we've done and had. But hello. But but I just pray it runs and it's got the legs of a marathon runner.
Yeah.
I will say, sorry, just quickly, you know, if there's an upside to a movie like this from a major studio that's produced at this scale, taking so long to get made, it's that once it does get made, everyone involved is incredibly grateful. And I've never, no matter how stressed I was about, you know, the writing and all the things I was, you know, behind the scenes things you're dealing with as writer, producer, and all that stuff. Every day we would come to set, I've never seen a happier, more delighted group of people. Like those boardroom scenes were yelling at each other, but when the camera stopped rolling, I just looked around like, I've never been with everyone just felt so, I could feel everyone, including myself, just feeling so grateful to be there. It was like, it's the most, as you can see, the funniest, most delightful group of people. Like, I wish we had behind the scenes drama to talk about, because that gets you a lot of press. But
it was a lot of hymnals being sung, a lot of love songs.
I mean, Madison and Miss Lawrence were like always like bursting out into song. I mean, like, it was the most joyful set. I don't know if I'll ever experience anything like it again, because it was just so rare. And that was something.
Bros too.
I think
look, sister, to do
Bros too, Electric
what
Boogaloo.
Must be done.
Yeah. Anyway,
Guy, you play the consummate wingman, and I wish Henry's escapades, I think, could fill a whole movie on its own.
I like to think so.
What did you want to bring to the role personally?
Oh, I mean, one of the cool things about my role in this film is it is the one role that classically has been played by gay guys in romantic comedies. I was the sassy gay friend in a Natalie Portman movie 10 years ago. And it was really lovely to just be there in a room full of like 1,000 gay extras that felt like a real gay space. And I think that these things felt honest, that these spaces felt honest and not like we were representing what straight people will be comfortable with from queer life, but an authentic representation of what our lives are. And it lets things like Bobby's monologue ring truer because you know that this is in an authentic space. And I think that having that Bobby monologue on the first day was also just such an important mission statement to everyone on that set, to what we were doing. Like while I was watching it behind the monitors, I was like, oh, I had read the monologue, but seeing it happen and realizing that this was actually going to be in a movie, it changed the way I got to think about the whole movie. Luckily, my job was just to sling jokes and stand in one place. That's what I'm comfortable with. But knowing that we were doing something that was beautiful and honest, I think lifted everyone's spirits.
Judd, you've helmed so many of our favorite films. You've changed the landscape of comedy. With this being the first gay rom-com from a major studio with this great LGBTQ plus cast, these are important steps for underrepresented communities. How do you hope it will influence film comedies going forward?
Well, it is insane that there aren't already 1,000 of these, and so I'm just really proud that we were able to make it, and you see what the experience was, and I'm just really moved by by what's happened and the joy that we all felt last night. And I always feel like the system is just behind. They're chasing the last thing that was successful. They're generally not looking to do something new. So these movies are important because they say, take chances. There are so many communities that are underrepresented, and you should do way more of these.
Yeah. I'm going to incorporate some press questions now. This one probably for Billy and Nick. Romantic comedies have so many conventions the writers are required to follow. Did you feel constrained by these, or is there comfort in having a blueprint to follow?
I love romantic comedies. I love the moves of this kind of story, but it was also important again that we follow, that we be honest in telling the story, and that we, as Billy said, that what would happen next, what would really happen next. And so while there are certainly conventions, I think the only thing that we needed to do is it needed to have a happy ending, which is also an honest ending. It's not like a lot of people do fall in love and have happy endings, So I think that was the only thing that we kind of needed to hit. But I don't think we were like, oh, this has to happen here or that has to happen there.
I really love the balance that we found between authentically representing, the experience of being a single 40-something gay man in 2022, while also balancing it out with some of those classic rom-com elements that I do love. Sure, we could have made a movie where they break up at the end, but what would be the point of that? We've had so many movies that are so many of the most high-profile LGBTQ stories are always about struggling and torture, and we're dying, and we're in the closet, and we're in the 50s, and everyone's tortured, and
straight people doing their best impression of gay pain.
That's thank you, Guy, always more articulate than me. And that's but really that is what it is. So can't we have one fucking movie where we're happy at the end? I don't understand why that's controversial, and it's interesting what we consider to be guilty pleasures. Romantic comedies are considered guilty pleasures. Why? Because they appeal to women and gay men? Why isn't Batman a guilty pleasure? Well, why isn't every superhero movie a guilty pleasure, based on a comic book? Those movies are great, but why is that the norm and what's considered commercial, and a movie about falling in love considered something I should feel guilty about? Doesn't make any sense. I saw Brokeback Mountain once. It was great. I've seen Pretty Woman 50 times. So, a lot of times, it's when Harry Met Sally originally got a bad review in the New York Times. You know what I mean? When you go back and look at a lot of those movies that we all now love, you've got, man, a lot of these movies that were like, oh my God, like stood the test of time. Like go back and read the original reactions and people are like, it's like a Hollywood rom-com. It's like, yeah, that we all love watching over and over again for 100 years. You know, I saw Dirty Dancing in the theater twice, all right? So, you know, I think I don't have a problem with those rom-com tropes because with some of them, as long as you're telling the story in as authentic a way as you can, like that's what I love about the movie. You know, I get swept away by the movie. I always watch the movie, and at the beginning I'm really nervous and listening to what's getting laughs or not. But by the end, I'm like, God, those two guys look so happy. Like, and they've been through it all. I'm like, I fucking want that. Like, that's like uplifting. Like, Bros is about the good things in life. You know, so much of what we get is like gritty and cynical, and this is about making people feel good. So I'm not going to feel guilty about that.
On the topics of the good thing in life, in addition to all of you, the cast includes Harvey Fierstein, Bowen Yang, Amanda Burse, Kristen Chenoweth, Deborah Messing, a whole cornucopia of queer icons. Was it important to you to pay respect to those who have come before you and also those who the community holds up?
Oh yeah, hugely important, you know, and that's part of what I'm talking about in that beach monologue too. You know, one of the things I am so grateful that Universal supported, of course, the idea that we have an all LGBTQ cast. And by the way, I don't know who's here from Universal, but we have to keep shouting out Universal and how grateful we are because a major studio not only got behind a gay rom-com, you know, they could have wanted some like soft, cheesy sitcom-y thing, and we gave them like a hard R Apatow Stoller gay rom-com, which is like very unapologetic, and they've gotten behind it in such a major way. We're so thankful. But yeah, I mean, one of the things we wanted to accomplish is obviously we wanted a lot of diversity in the movie. The LGBTQ community is like such an eclectic community, you know? But one of the things we don't talk about is like sort of the generation gap between LGBTQ folks. You know, like LGBTQ folks over a certain age navigated a much, much different world than like a queer kid who's 20 years old right now. Not that it's easy for that queer kid, but it's a much different experience. And so we have to take every opportunity we get to honor people like Harvey Fierstein and Amanda. I mean, Harvey Fierstein made Torch Song Trilogy, his movie about being gay, in the 80s. He wrote, directed, starred, and produced that. Amanda Bierce, who plays Luke's mother in the movie, who was on Married with Children and Fright Night back in the day, hasn't been in a major film in decades. She was the first woman to come out on primetime TV in 1992, before Ellen DeGeneres, before Rosie O'Donnell. She was on the cover of The Advocate in 1992. Right? You know, we need to make sure we are always honoring those people while they're still here and inviting them to the party too, because we would not be here without them.
We're just about out of time, so I want to ask a question of the actors. You all come together to reflect the vibrancy of the community. Why is it important for you, for LGBTQ plus actors, writers, to be able to tell their own stories, to share their lived experience with audiences?
It's important for me because when I was coming up, I didn't have a point of reference to look at a movie in a theater and see people that look like me. When I was at home watching television, I didn't see people that looked like me, that truly represented who I was. I saw people that joked about it, you know, and laughed at us for it and got celebrated for doing it. But I had never seen anybody be able to live honestly and be celebrated for who they are the way that we can now. And so I feel like being a part of this moment that is history, that will be a part of history, again, it's by divine order.
Well, for me, it's important that we all get an opportunity to use our own catchphrases and lines and stuff like that, instead of watching our stuff get stolen and used, and people out there, yes, honey, yes, God, and it's just like, girl, what? Pay pay me for my time, you know. Don't use my time and you get paid for it. So it just feels good for, you know, us to be playing us instead of watching us be so badly played by straight people, you know. So that's the importance for me. I got to use all my catchphrases up on it.
Stories are tools for understanding your life. And for so much of time, queer people have not seen our stories represented. And we've had to find ourselves in heterosexual narratives. And we've done a good job with that. But I think that not having those stories keeps us divided. It keeps us weak. It is a way of stopping us from being able to have unity as a community. And one of the things I thought was most beautiful about this was not just the diversity of the cast, but also the instrument of the museum gives so much of a moment to all of those stories that we haven't heard enough of. That final shot, we're all dancing and it's so fun, but Walt Whitman is there, and Queen Christina, and Audre Lorde, and every time when we were doing it, I cried. Every time I watch it, I cried, because those people didn't get to have a dance party celebrating their love, and we do, and we're so lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
On that note, please join me in celebrating the cast and crew of Bros.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.